Hi, my name is Mike Farrell. I'm the president of the board of directors of Death Penalty Focus and Abolition Organization. The following episode of Ear Hustle contains language and content that may not be appropriate for all listeners. There's also a brief mention of suicide. Listener discretion is advised.
We have Ming. She has a very distinctive smile, like a Bugs Bunny-ish, in a wheelchair. She's short, 5'2". She's Asian. Very nice dimples. Then there's Cynthia. Cynthia's got like mahogany hair, very nice smile, pretty eyes, very curvy.
I like this.
Why?
Because she's doing our job for us.
Yeah, well, I mean, these women have known each other for a long time, so it's cool to hear how they describe each other.
The woman we just heard from, her name's Bubbles, and she was kind of the cut-up, the class clown, the joker of the bunch.
Okay, then there's Jess. How tall are you, about 6'4"? She wears glasses, rosy cheeks. Cora, she's got like a stripper's thing going on.
Jesus is watching you, Bubbles.
Very ladylike.
I'm scandalized to hear you described as a stripper.
Why don't you just...
Erlen, do you remember Cora?
Mm-hmm.
She was so proper. She reminded me of anybody's great aunt. Like, you know, she would have white gloves on, a little patent leather purse, sitting in the church pew.
A very good example would be the Golden Girls. She
Not
played on
a
the Golden...
stripper. There was nothing stripper.
Nothing. Next up, Cora introduced Bubbles.
I'm going to describe Bubbles' personality. Whenever any of us was feeling down and out, she was the first one there, bringing you something to eat, something to give you comfort, to give you a hug, and wrap you in her arms and tell you it was going to be okay.
In her voluptuous figure.
How would you describe Bubbles?
I would describe Bubbles as a big, sparkling bubble.
Yeah, it suits her. So we're really grateful that you said yes to this. We keep calling it Death Row, but do you call it Condemned? Condemned.
Or the row.
Or the Row.
We call it the row.
And that's who we're hanging out with today, the women of California's Death Row.
That's right. In the last episode, we met men at San Quentin who spent decades on death row there. This time, we're talking to the women.
And just like the guys, these women have recently been moved out of the death row housing unit that they were in CCWF.
The Central California Women's Facility.
And they've joined the mainline prison population. And it's been a shift, though I think not in the ways that you'd expect.
Definitely not. I'm Nigel Poor.
I'm Erlen Woods, and this is Ear Hustle from PRX's Radiotopia.
My first 3 years after I received the death penalty, I got sent to Orange County. They had no idea what to do with me because I was the first woman, so they had no clue.
This is Cynthia. Most people call her Cindy. Cindy was the first woman in California to be given the death sentence after the death penalty was reinstated in 1978.
By the time she got to CCWF, there were 2 more women on the roll.
We got to watch it slowly progress up from us that were here first on to the rest of them that came. So we watched the cage grow. Like when I was first there, it really was a tiny little dog run. And there was just a few of us in the beginning of the cage. And then as more people came, they started to expand it.
So we should probably explain what death row looked like. You know, this cage that Cindy's talking about.
Yeah, because it was totally different than where the men lived at in San Quentin. At San Quentin, Death Row was its own building, separate from the rest of the population, and it housed about 600 to 700 condemned men.
Death Row at CCWF housed only about 25 women. That was the total population of condemned women in California. So they didn't have their own building like the condemned men at San Quentin did. CCWF's Death Row was situated in a larger housing unit, and we weren't able to see it, but it sounds like it was separated from the rest of the unit by a metal fence. That's what Cindy was calling a cage.
Here's Man Ling. She arrived on the row in 2012.
First receiving my sentence, I was, sorry to say, but I was suicidal. And so when I first arrived at the row, I didn't know what to expect. I was scared, I was apprehensive. My neighbor calls and goes, "Hey, new girl." I'm like, "Yeah." And she's like, "I'm part of the row. I wanted to welcome you. That bag on your desk that you see, that was from all of us. We didn't know what you needed, so we just gave you a little bit of everything." I was like, "Okay, thank you." I went and looked through. It was bowls, paper, pens, pencils, a stinger, utensils, Tupperware. They also gave me little snacks, like little chocolates, a pack of meat. I started tearing up because I did not expect something so kind, so generous from a place that had that kind of stigma on it.
Did you see the bag there, or did you not note it until they said there's a bag there for you?
I didn't note it because I was so in my head that I'm here on the row.
Yeah.
I was resigning myself to, be in the cell for the rest of my life. That first night there, I had a friend who lived 2 doors down from me that I was in county with, and she called over and said, "Ling, if you need anything, let me know, even if it's just to talk all night with you." And so that first night was comforting to me because of her. She was able to calm me down enough that I was able to get a little bit of sleep that night.
Do you remember, did you do most of the talking, or did she?
She did. She did.
The first 2 weeks after arriving on the row, the women had to be in their cells like 24/7.
Yeah, that's the window where the prison is assessing whether you will be a risk, if they let you out your cell to do what they call program.
Right. And usually when we talk about programming in prison, we mean like the groups and activities and classes,
Right.
all that stuff that people do. But when you're on death row, program really is basically just the time you get to come out of your cell.
I was found suitable to be able to come out and program. And the first person I met was Bubbles. She and one other person on the row played a joke on me, was holding hands, came over, and the other person drew a fake beard, a mustache on her, and said, "Oh, we're husband and wife. Just wanted to welcome you to the row." Like, okay, I'm going to stay away from them, But turns out she's one of the best people you could ever meet. She started little by little pulling me out of my shell, talking to me more, would sit out with me, we'd play cards, we'd watch TV. For however long she had to sit with me, she sat with me.
It was very traumatic going into an unknown situation.
Cora's the one you called a golden girl.
Yeah, not a stripper.
Mm-mm.
Are people going to like you? Are people going to dislike you because of your case? How much of the information that was out there do they know when you walk in? Is there a preconceived idea?
And Does that happen? People dislike you because of your case?
They never came to my face and told me. I didn't like discussing that aspect of anybody.
Was that a big topic, why people were there?
I wouldn't say it was a big topic, but I mean, human beings are curious.
Sometimes they'd be watching TV, like, in a day room, and one of those true crime shows would come on.
They have the true crime channel, and a lot of us pop up on that, and you could hear the whispers or whatever. I mean, it is what it is.
I happened to be going through the channels, and I caught the last 5 minutes of the one that was about me.
Again, this is Cindy.
How quickly did you realize it was about you?
Pretty quickly. And it's really hard because the whole time you're looking at it, you're thinking, who are they talking about? That's not my case. That's not me. And then they just switch it all up. I always say my crime's bad enough. You don't need to add anything extra. Then just know that other people have seen that. Nobody may say anything to you, but you know they've seen it because so many people watch those stations. After I saw it, it took me a minute not to be looking around to see if people were staring at me.
Why do you think it's so fascinating to people?
It's the same reason why I feel like people here look at people a certain way. It's because it makes them feel better about themselves. You can say, oh, my case wasn't so bad. Look at theirs. Look at them. See them? Because you hear it. It's not just I think it. You hear people say it. I think it's the same thing with people when they like these shows. Maybe it makes them feel better about their lives.
I was just curious, did the actress look like you?
No, they didn't even pick a good-looking person. I was like, God, could you not pick somebody that was a lot prettier than me, to have done it? Because sometimes you'll see them, and they'll have the most beautiful people playing people, and I'm like, couldn't you have done that?
Earlonne, I gotta say, I actually get what she's saying. I mean, you're not happy you're on TV. They're talking about your crime, and yet you still care who plays you because for some reason, you still want to look good.
Yeah, you definitely do. You don't want to be on there all disheveled.
Yeah, who would you want to represent you?
Morgan Freeman.
A little old for you.
Ice Cube.
Okay, all right, I can see that. I mean, what's really interesting to me, though, is that even inside prison, people are fascinated by death row and people's crimes.
Right. I mean, you hear someone has been sentenced to death, you want to know what they did, just on the strength.
And I think when it comes down to it, when it's women, there's just this kind of extra fascination. And I hate to admit it, but I noted even on our team, we were way more curious about what got these women to death row, whereas we don't really discuss it when we talk about the men.
Yeah, well, we said it before, it's really rare for women to commit crimes that would get them on death row.
Yeah, and so it piques your curiosity in a certain kind of way.
Cindy says a lot of the incarcerated women assume that she and the other condemned ladies were there because they had harmed children.
The misconception for a lot of people was that we were all there for child cases. So you would be walking across the yard and people would be screaming terrible things at you. And I got to a point one time when it was happening, and I just stopped dead. And I yelled back to him, you got the wrong case. That's not me. We're not all the same. Sometimes you can only just take so much, the ridicule, the things like that. Another thing that was really hard for us was when we would come to visiting, the difference was we were locked in those tiny little rooms.
Cindy's talking about how whenever she or another woman on death row received a visit from a family member or a lawyer, they were put in these special rooms inside the main visiting room.
Yeah, they were like, almost like a closet, but the door had a glass panel on it. So everybody could peek in and try to get a look at these women.
And we couldn't come out of those rooms. We couldn't do anything. So you're like, who's the puppy in the window? Everybody walking by, staring at you, gawking at you. They didn't realize we can hear inside those rooms. You could hear what people were saying about you. Oh, dead man walking, things like that.
Over time, this group of women formed a pretty serious bond.
We created a family.
Here's Bubbles again.
There was so few of us. I mean, there was a total of 24 of us. It was like a dysfunctional family, but when push came to shove, we were united. Somebody's family member passed away. They were sick. Somebody was going through cancer. We were like glue. So it was what you made of it. And I was blessed to be there and grow and heal with those people.
When people are sick, everybody had like their own different thing that they would do. One person might be a person who cooks something. I would go in and clean the room. Each person like had like their thing that they did to try to help other people.
I might add to that. Cindy was our exercise Jane Fonda. And if it hadn't been for Cindy and one of the other girls that I lived with who encouraged me to this day, I probably would be in a wheelchair. We got up every single morning for the at least 21 years that I was there, and we exercised together. I would get the look if I came out in my getting ready to go take a shower. We would put on a house dress, and the look was, "And what do you think you're doing?"
She even had me doing Richard Simmons. Oh, Splendor of the Oldies.
Richard Simmons? I mean, Earlonne, the vibe there was so different from what we saw with the men at San Quentin's death row.
Yeah, those guys were describing a really somber, sometime violent place. On the women's death row, I don't think it was like that at all.
Our row, it's not what most people think of. It looks scary from the outside because it literally looks like a big chicken coop, but it has all the rooms. Rooms open up, you step directly into the day room. And in that day room, you had a library inside of there. You had a hairdresser. We had an ironing board. We had an iron. We had a TV. We had a VCR. We had phones. We had washer, dryer. The only thing we did not have were groups. We were offered no self-help groups because why waste money?
This was true of San Quentin, too. If you're part of the general prison population, you can take college courses, run marathons.
Yeah, perform in a Shakespeare play. There's NA, AA, all kinds of self-help groups.
People on death row, they got none of that because the feeling was, why waste money on these people who are going to die anyway?
Right, and for a long time, that's exactly what it was like at CCWF. Women had nothing to do, really, so they had to come up with their own forms of entertainment.
The back of where we're at, it's the trees and it's wildlife. And they come in because the door to the back, there's a big gap.
We had a sidewinder that came in, right? Mm-hmm. Celeste was in the shower, showering with it. There's a snake in there.
I had little Kermit. He was a little tree frog.
Little baby bunnies would come hop into the building. Officers have to go running after them and corralling them and throwing them back outside.
Larry was about the size, when I got him, he was about the size of maybe a dime.
Bubbles had a tree frog named Larry.
Oh, he was so tiny, and he had this great big plastic tub that we turned in his little habitat. I loved him. I adored him. But, oh, God, he was a savage when he'd eat.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
What did you feed him?
Spiders, any kind of bugs. But there was a spider that we put in there. Cindy had brought him in. Bigger than what Larry was. And we're like, oh, no, he's not going to be able to eat this. So I'm too afraid of spiders. So I'm like, geez, come on.
Who has true arachnophobia. Okay.
I'm like, you got to get him.
I was like, no. She's like, it's going to kill Larry. It's going to kill.
So she takes a pencil.
She gives me a pencil.
And she's chasing the spider. The spider's running from her. And Larry's like, hey, what are you doing here? Grab that thing and inhaled it. All you see is the spider, the legs going like this.
I think both of us in
like,
unison were like, wow.
What happened to Larry?
Oh, during a room search, they took him. I was devastated.
It's like a comfort. These animals become a lot to them because of the fact that, you don't have anything to love. Mm-hmm. And so you get those little animals and they become your little world. Just like people have their, in the free world, you have your support animals, your comfort animals. And in a way for people in prison, I think that's kind of what the animals are for some people.
The women of death row had this really nurturing way, both with the animals and with each other. But they also had this very goofy side, like they were super into their hijinks.
We would pull pranks on each other.
So, for several years, someone liked to put Post-its on poor Mickey's back.
This is Jessica, the one who Bubbles claimed was 6'4".
And she's talking about another condemned woman named Mickey. Mickey wasn't there for our first visit, but it was clear that everybody loved her. She was like the heart of the condemned row family.
Now, Mickey, I want to paint the scene because Mickey is a much older, 73-ish lady playing rummy. So she's playing with Kathy, sometimes with Cindy, sometimes I would get to sit in, and then Bubbles would be right behind her. And she'd be scribbling
On a Post-it.
and would stick it on her back. So one day I was sitting at the table. I think Cindy was cleaning a room.
No, but what happened before that, what led you to be protective, was Mickey went out she had to leave the cage to go see the nurse, and on her back had a post-it that said, "My milkshake brings all the boys to the yard." So
What did it say?
It said,
My
my
milkshake
milkshake brought
brings-
all the boys to the yard.
so
I was very offended because Mickey, I love Mickey to death. And so when Mickey got back, and she was a little upset, a little bit later on, when everyone calmed down, I sat with them. I said, here's what we're going to do. Got some paper out. Bubbles is sitting there, and I just kind of leaned back and put it on her wheelchair.
I kept seeing staff and people walking by going, and I'm like, what's going on?
It said, honk if you like big girls.
Oh, dude.
And every time it off through the rest of the day, all you would hear is, ha, ha.
How did you feel about that?
I expected it. Man.
Another story they all wanted to tell involved Kathy. People said Mickey was the heart of death row, but Kathy was the brain.
Yeah, she kind of ran the show, and we met her later, and you could totally see why people called her the brain. She was very proper, authoritative, maybe even just a little bit bossy, and everyone called her Mom.
I come out every morning and I would get on the treadmill or the bike or something, and I would listen to music that I like.
Like what?
I like Alicia Keys. I like a lot of oldies. And Bubbles, I left my CD player on the table to go because I forgot my water.
While Kathy was getting water, Bubbles took that Alicia Keys CD out of Kathy's player and replaced it with something else.
And I picked up the CD player, and this rapper from South Central Los Angeles, I don't know half of what he was saying, but I did get all the curse words.
It was Eazy-E. And I remember the song was Automobile.
I don't remember that song.
Yeah, pretty bad.
Okay, we'll find it.
Yeah.
Really bad.
So we hop in the back seat, you know, man. This bitch rubbing all on my dick and fronting like she gonna give me the pussy, man.
I got all the genitalia he was talking about, and they thought it was funniest. And I jumped off the treadmill with the treadmill still going.
Do you remember any of the lyrics that you could recite for us?
And on the face, like, what?
No.
We asked her if she could say some of the lyrics, and she's like, something like genitalia and swears and genitalia.
I said, bitch, you don't have to front on me, dear.
I'm thinking back to our last episode about the men on San Quentin's death row. And I don't know if listeners will remember, but listening to these women talk and remembering how the guys at San Quentin talked, I mean, they couldn't be more different.
Yeah, I mean, you know, that episode had a real somber tone to it. You know, it was dark. But I think the difference of the death rows is that San Quentin death row was violent. Like, cats up there was killing each other, stabbing each other. It was all kind of shit going on.
Definitely. And honestly, making that episode was painful, and listening back on it was also really difficult. Their suffering was so clear. And doing this interview with the women There was so much laughter and funny stories they want to tell us. And I know there was hard stuff for them. I mean, there's no doubt. But we just weren't hearing it. I want to start wrapping this up, but I just want to say something and have you react to it. So maybe for the last 30 minutes, you guys have been deeply reminiscing, and mostly with humor and with longing. Mm-hmm. This is what it appears to somebody who's just listening to you. And it sounds like, if I didn't know what you were talking about, I would never guess you were talking about your life together on the row. Mm-hmm. It sounds very fun. It sounds very loving and supportive. And you clearly all have a lot of positive emotions about it. I wonder what each of you make of that observation, that that's what comes across to a stranger, that when you talk about it, you talk about it with love and what sounds like longing.
Even though being stuck in a cage like that, like we were for so long, we were able to find some sort of, and I'll never use the word happiness because you're not really ever happy in prison, but contentment, companionship, friendships that'll last us for the rest of our lives, the family that we have and still have.
I think for me, I don't want to paint any other picture than I'm a human being. Cindy is a human being. Mickey, Kathy, Ling, Belinda, Cora, every one of us that came from back there is a human being. And I want to only talk about the times where we laughed, where we had a joke or we had fun I don't want to talk about bad things. I want people to recognize that we are good human beings that have a relationship that can build a friendship.
So it's intentional for you.
For me, I think so, yeah.
This is a provocative thing to say to you. What if people heard this and said, these people are not taking seriously what they did to get to death row. They're laughing.
I've been down 23 years. If you would have talked to me my first year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, I doubt the conversation is the same.
Being there was what you made of it. But it's not to say that we didn't have sorrows, that we didn't go through depression, that we didn't have certain days that were hard to get our head off the pillow, because we all experience that. And that's very real even today. But it is what you make of it. And if you dwell in that negative spot and that negative thinking, it's going to get you nowhere.
You know, after we left, I was still, I don't know, this conversation was still really sort of weighing on me. I was trying to understand it and get my mind around, again, just like the laughter and the camaraderie they had. And I couldn't help but think about Steve from our last episode about death row at San Quentin and just how different it was for him. He seemed crippled and burdened by his experience on death row, but not just his experience, his remorse about his crime. That it was hard for me to imagine him ever like laughing and joking around, because it was really all about the heaviness of what he had done and what he was living.
Right. And I wonder if it has to do like with their environment. Like,
what do you mean?
Like Steve was more isolated, you know, in a cell, you know, all day. And they were like in a community type environment.
Oh.
So they were able to just chop it up all day, talk about different shit. And then he was just pretty much left to his thoughts.
Yeah, I can see that. So a couple weeks later, we went back for another visit to CCWF to talk some more. Do you remember the conversation we had towards the end of the interview where I asked everyone, or I made the comment about how everyone talks about death row with these or condemned with very fond memories, and there's so much laughing, and I was a little bit confused by that. Do you have any other thoughts on that? Because it really is such a striking difference to talk to you women here and then talking to the men at San Quentin about their memories of being on death row. And I'm just wondering how listeners are going to hear that there was so much laughter. And so I'm wondering, what about some of the harder times? Or what did you make of the conversation focusing so much on the positive?
For one, I think the difference of the women's and the men was there were so few of us that we were allowed to program together, which the men never really got that opportunity.
I think it's because of, like I said, the family dynamic that we built here. I don't know how the programming was at San Quentin, but you hear things, and I guess from what I've heard, San Quentin, they're isolated. And so they don't really have the interpersonal connections.
Yeah, the only thing I can keep coming back to is the size, the difference in the size of the places. Yeah. That's the only thing I can imagine, that, it was only 22 women, and death row was what, at the height, it was like 700.
700 and something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so dark.
Yeah.
There's a woman we've heard a couple times so far, but we haven't said much about yet, and that's Jessica. Jessica is a trans woman who also spent time on San Quentin's death row. Can you talk about how the people were on death row at San Quentin when you got there?
They just left me alone. They didn't really say a lot. I was in my own isolated world, literally isolated.
When Jessica was transferred to CCWF's death row, she says that the women took her in right away. She was one of them.
The inmates were amazing and yelling to me constantly in the holding cell for the week that I was there to get into the cage.
What were they yelling?
Just like, are you okay? Do you need anything? And, me in my own little world, in my own little bubble, I had just had surgery, not trying to get out of bed much. Just seeing their faces through the cage, through the glass, it was overwhelming, but it was accepting. And that was something I didn't have. It was a little community. Stop. Don't start your stuff, Bubbles.
What do you think accounts for the difference between the way the incarcerated people at San Quentin treated you and the incarcerated people here treated you?
I think it's because we were females and we had more empathy.
I was just another girl to join the little fold and join the little family.
But this world they're describing has really changed.
Yep, because over the last few years, the women of death row have had to move out and join the main line.
More on that when we come back.
So as a reminder, over the last 5 years or so, under a new state law, California has been closing down its death row units.
The death penalty still exists, but people who have been sentenced to death are now living alongside the mainline prison population. They're not segregated anymore.
And at the Central California Women's Facility, this happened gradually.
The first step was a pilot program where women could volunteer to go to the main line.
Kathy and Mickey were some of the first to go. And remember, the other women called Kathy the brain and Mickey the heart of death row.
They were kind of like pioneers.
Me, Mickey, and Kathy have been together forever. We've been together in that cage since 1992. And so we made a group decision that we were coming out together. And boy, was that an experience for the three of us. We were told that the four of us will be going to one room together. We arrived at count time, and they said, you're going here, you're going here, you're going here, and you're going there. And we're like, what? One person got really lucky. She went to a great room, okay?
With how many other people?
I think she had like 4 or 5 in her room. And I ended up in okay room. And then my friend Mickey, she ended up in the worst of the rooms. Poor Mickey ended up in a room that almost killed her.
So on our first 2 visits to CCWF, we still hadn't met Mickey.
No, and we really had to meet her because she was clearly an important part of this community.
And she was full of these little affirmations.
I always tell people, you want to believe something? Believe it. I live with an attitude of gratitude. I never forget a kindness. My mom taught me that.
One thing you notice about Mickey right from the jump, her hair.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell us about your hairstyle?
I can't have a facelift, so I go shorter and shorter as the years. I'll be 78 in May 15th. So yeah, the shorter the hair, the younger I look.
So it's quite short. It's not spiky.
Well, it's not buzzed.
No,
I mean,
no,
I'm
no.
not like
It's-
a dude.
No. It's very feminine. It has a lot of body to it.
Yeah,
so
I
it
have.
lifts up.
I have a kind of thin hair, fine hair, but I have so much of it.
You have a lot of hair. It looks
Yeah.
very like you want to touch it. It looks like
Go
it would
ahead.
be okay. Oh, that's what I thought. It's really soft and buoyant. She had that kind of blonde hair that's really a bunch of different tones of blonde, like sort of lighter on top, a little bit darker underneath, really deep and interesting.
She was very put together.
Well, I went to the Cosmo, and I said, I'd like some streaks. And the young girl that did it said, I don't know what I'm doing. And she said, do you want to make another appointment? I said, no, it's hair. Do what you can, and if you screw it up, I'll cut it off. I mean, but we had such a lovely time, and I was very relaxed, and it wasn't what I wanted, but everybody else liked it, and now it's the blonde's almost gone, so I'm basically an old 78-year-old with gunmetal.
You can see why everyone said Mickey was the heart of the row.
She was very warm with us, sort of shockingly upbeat, but clearly getting off the row was really hard on her.
I was placed in a very bad room. I was invisible. I won't go into detail about the room. Since then, I have forgiven everyone.
But what was it like? Can you tell us what it was like when you...
Scared to death.
What
Oh
about
my
when
God.
you, like, the
First
moment you got
walked
there?
in,
Yeah, tell us about
I
that.
looked at Cindy and I said, have we made a mistake? And she looked at me and she said, I just don't know. Not everyone likes death row inmates. I'm sure in that room they didn't want an old woman and they didn't want a death row inmate. I mean, you can't blame them. They don't know me. How would I have felt not knowing and this person's coming off a death row into my room? Because they believe the worst, of course. There wasn't respect in there. And I'm just going to leave it at that.
But do you think their reaction was based on fear or anger or
no,
judgment?
I think some of them were just mean-ass people, tell you the truth.
Mickey didn't want to go into detail because, like she said, she's forgiven them.
Yeah, and she really likes to focus on the positive.
But some of the other women filled in a little more of the picture.
They said Mickey was bullied. People gave her a hard time about when she could use the bathroom, and they told her she had to clean it with a toothbrush. All of this took a toll on her.
And she was like 70-something.
Yeah, she's in her 70s.
And then I became very ill. I was down to not eating. I ate one slice of bread a day, and I drank very little water, and I'm a diabetic. I was so sad. I was so traumatized. I couldn't even pray, and I'm a person who prays. All I could say was Jesus. I didn't even have it in me to do anything else. And I cried. I grieved for hours every day on end. I grieved. And yet it was my choice to come out here, and I don't understand my reaction. But I was in bad shape. I had an emotional meltdown. I didn't do anything. I was just in a state of grief.
What were you grieving?
I believe it was the loss of the Rowe family. I was loved. I was respected. I love these women. You know, I spent 34 years with some.
The other women who were still on the row heard what happened to Mickey, and it became a cautionary tale. Manling and Bubbles did not want to leave the row. In fact, they asked if they could stay.
Some people volunteered, and we kept in touch with them, and we heard both sides, both the good and the bad. And hearing the good, we were skeptical. And when we heard the bad, especially when we heard the bad from one of the people that we know doesn't exaggerate, doesn't lie, we were like, yeah, we're not going out. We're going to hold out to the very last minute.
I can honestly tell you that part of the reason I wanted to stay back there was because of the rapport that I had with our staff. Mm-hmm. I spent 20 years there, and you get to build a rapport and know them. I would talk about my family, what was going on with my kids. And like vice versa, they would share how things were going with their day or what they did with their family. And you build that, I can't say friendship because that would be over familiarity, but you build that solid rapport. And I miss so many of our staff that when I see some of them doing escorts coming over here because we stay here for work, I get teary-eyed, so I miss that.
I was scared. It was something that I didn't know. It was something new. I wasn't used to it. I don't like change. And so I was like, no, I can't do it.
Were you scared of being hurt, or just the feelings that would come up, or feeling like I was standing out and people know I don't know what I'm doing?
All of the above. All of the above. I felt like a tornado came through, uprooted us, and tossed us all, scattered us to all different sides of the earth. And it was all new faces, all new things that we had to learn and had no idea what it was or what it was about.
Eventually, Manling and Bubbles couldn't hang back on the row anymore. They, like everyone else, had to leave the row and join the main line.
And they really didn't know what to expect.
When the door opened to the building for us to step out, it was like a parade. They had these bins ready with all our stuff in there. My boss was out there. Everybody was cheering and clapping. It was really welcoming.
We had inmates and staff alike yelling freedom when we were coming out of the row, and then being unshackled in front of them and being, hugged and cheered and helped every step of the way. And then basically we were free. That same night, it was almost a full moon. It was the Lunar New Year. And I had, for years, I would celebrate in my own way with my friends and my family here, but I was never able to go out and watch the moon on Lunar New Year. That first night out of the row was my first experience of Night Yard. And I just seeing the moon for the first time in almost 20 years. Coming back from Chow, the moon had partially risen and it was right above our unit. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's the moon. And it just flooded me. And tears just started coming.
It wasn't just these big, majestic moments. It was also a lot of small stuff that honestly would never have occurred to me.
We had regular sinks in our room and a faucet that turned the handle and the water turns on. You have to turn it off too, because on the row, they were push buttons. And so, like a drinking fountain. So one night I went to go do the dishes and I just left it. And like 2 hours later, my friend goes, what's that noise? I'm like, oh, the water's running. Where is it coming from? And then it dawned on me, I left the sink going. So, 'cause you're not used to it.
The doors also took some getting used to.
Yeah, on death row, the doors slid open automatically.
But on the main line, they just unlocked.
They'll click to unlock the doors, and you have I think 30 seconds to catch the knob and turn it to open. Otherwise, you're stuck for another hour. And so, yeah, it took a little bit to get used to.
So you're waiting to hear that click?
Yeah, hear click, click, click. Every door's different. It's almost a year. Past a year since we've been out. March 7th was a year, and I'm barely starting to see the positive aspects of being out here. It was such a culture shock that, yeah, some people thrived, other people just reverted into a depression. We didn't know what to do. We wanted to stay in all the time. I felt like this past year, it was just on automatic. Just go through the motions, kind of like a fake it till you make it. And I'm starting to feel the positivity of being out here, going out more, reaching out and saying, hey, you know, I want to try this, I want to try that.
Mickey put it perfectly. She said, I was mourning you guys.
Here's Cora again.
And that's really what happens. Bubbles and I were talking about that this morning, that this last holiday season we went through, it was hard because we were so accustomed to doing Thanksgiving together, doing Christmas together, you know, celebrating birthdays and stuff. And it wasn't that way anymore, you know, and it's mourning your people.
You were once torn away from your family, right? So you carry that pain. And then now that our family had broke up in here, you feel that pain all over again. So that's what it felt like. And so even out here, we're all separated. So it was a hard holiday.
We were much more of a united force back there than I would say we are out here. You know, we see each other, you know, and things like that, but it's not the same. And maybe it's because of the fact that we are living under the sentence of death. Because of that, you have each other to cling to boost us up, to keep us going along. And out here, you don't have that as much as you had back there.
I struggled with having that much freedom. I still crave isolation from time to time because it's what we know mentally. And it sounds sick and weird, but you crave that isolation.
When you think about I crave isolation, what do you see in your mind's eye as what are you craving? Can you describe it?
My room back there. It was my room. I had it decorated how I wanted. If I needed a way to escape people, or if I wasn't feeling it or whatever, I'd go to my room. And it was just me in there.
If the death row living situation were available to you, would you all go back to it?
If I can keep my job, absolutely. I'd skip there.
I heard a no.
Absolutely not. I've been able to do so many things since I've been out here. The ability to be able to walk around without being chained and escorted everywhere that I go. You know, the pluses far outweigh the minuses.
Before I was arrested, I was really expressive in how I explained things. And so I used my hands, I used my arms. It's like my entire body, I'm expressive. But here I learned to just stay in one position. And people are like, are you okay? Why do you just stay in one stiff position? And I'm like, I'm used to it. Because you're used to being waist chained and your hands in a certain position. And so you just find your comfort.
Your face is, in the 3 times I've spoken with you, has always been very expressive. And I wonder if it became more expressive the less you could use your body.
I think it has, because my parents, my family has told me the same thing. They're like, when did your facial expressions become more pronounced? I wonder if that's why. And I'm thinking about it. I'm like, I'm not shackled anymore.
Do you find that you're using your hands more?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm starting to become more expressive again.
Ear Hustle is produced by me, Earlonne Woods, Amy Standen, Bruce Wallace, Rasan New York Thomas, and Kat Schuknecht.
Shubnam Sigmund is the managing producer.
The producing team inside San Quentin includes Darrell Sadiq Davis and Tom Wynn. The inside managing producer is Tony DeFoya. Thanks also to Adesteo San Pablo.
Thanks to Warden Andes and Lieutenant Berry at San Quentin, Acting Warden Parker and Lieutenant Newborg at the California Institution for Women, and Warden Delacruz at the Central California Women's Facility for their support of the show.
Thanks also to this woman here.
I am Lieutenant Monique Williams, Central California Women's Facility, Administrative Assistant to Warden Anissa Delacruz, Public Information Officer. This episode was amazing. Thank you for taking time out to talk to our incarcerated women, and I approve this episode.
This episode was made possible by the Just Trust, building a smaller, more humane engine of justice and safety across the country.
Earlonne Woods and Bruce Wallace sound designed the show, with help from Darrell Sadiq Davis. Fernando Arruda and Harry Colhane are our engineers.
Music for this episode comes from Antoine Williams, David Jossie, Darrell Sadiq Davis, and me.
And also, I've got to thank my gym, 17 Reasons, which is right across the street from where we work, because they let me come in and record some of the ambi you heard in this episode.
Sound like a free plug, Nigel.
I love my gym. Come work out there with me, Earlonne, or any of our listeners.
For more information about this episode, check out the show notes on Ear Hustle's website, earhustlesq.com.
And if you want to learn more about this episode and all of our episodes, sign up for our monthly email newsletter, The Lowdown, where you'll find photos of people in our episodes and all kinds of other behind-the-scenes stuff. Sign up at earhustlesq.com/newsletter.
And here's something people are going to be hearing a lot about in our newsletter and pretty much everywhere else. The Ear Hustle 2025 Live Tour.
Dun, dun, dun. Earlonne, I am super excited about this. Yes, and we have just finalized all of our stops. We're starting in Nashville.
And we're going to be in Durham. Mm-hmm. We're going to be in Pittsburgh, Chicago, St. Paul, Minnesota.
Yep, some other places, but where are we finishing? Another
We're finishing.
Awesome city.
We're going to hang out with the homie, Lieutenant Sam Robinson, over in Texas.
Austin, Texas. We cannot wait.
Tickets go on sale this week. Get all the city and ticket details at earhustlesq.com/tour.
Ear Hustle is a proud member of Radiotopia from PRX, a network of independent, creator-owned, listener-supported podcasts.
Discover audio with vision at radiotopia.fm.
I'm Nigel Poor.
I'm Earlonne Woods.
Thanks for listening.
15 minutes later, she's sitting at a table with the biggest chick I ever seen in my entire life. She got to be about 8 foot tall, missing like half her teeth, and I'm like, oh, fuck. So I'm waiting for this girl to look at me and be like, you want to eat your cornbread?
Radiotopia.